All right, hello once again, Jeff Scott of Rankin Technical College. And as part of the Rankin Technical College AWD, or Application and Website Development Program, and in particular the AWD 1111.NET Framework with Web Database classes, with the .NET Framework with Web Databases class for the fall 2019 semester, I'm creating a series of video presentations based on the textbook that will be used for this class. That textbook, as shown, Pro ASP.NET MVC 5 in A-Press text by Adam Freeman. I am now in the middle of the last chapter, Chapter 27, and I'm on page 772, where we discuss in here defining the model. The author says, underpinning the AJAX functions is the model, which was defined like this. So this is a knockout. As you can see, it starts with KL. Knockout works by creating what are referred to as observable objects that it monitors for changes, and it uses it to update the HTML displayed by the browser. The model here is simple. It consists of an observable array, which is just like a regular JavaScript array, but it's wired up so that it can detect any changes made by knockout. All right, it says you can see how I use the model in AJAX functions like this. Those two statements that were highlighted, the remove all and the push, are how we get the data from the server into the model. We call the remove all method to remove any existing data from the observable array, and then iterate through the results we get from the server with the post method to populate the array with new data. All right. Near the top of page 773, defining the bindings. Knockout applies changes in the data model to HTML elements via data bindings. The most important ones are shown there in bold. Knockout is expressed using the data minus bind attribute, and there's a wide range of bindings available. 3 of these bindings are used in the example here. The basic format is shown towards the bottom of the screen here, is data minus bind equals type colon expression. The types of the 3 bindings that we have are a for each type, a text type, and a click type. All right, the author picked these 3 because they represent different ways in which knockout can be used. The for each and the text that are right here generate HTML elements and content from the data model. When the for each binding is applied to an element, knockout generates the child elements for each object in the expression, just like the razor @ for each that we've been using in the partial view. The text binding inserts the value of the expression as the text of the element that it is applied in. All right, page 774, processing the bindings. Knockout bindings are not processed automatically, which is why the author says he included the code that you see right there in the script element. All right, the document.ready, this is a standard jQuery call that basically says once the DOM has been loaded, okay, basically we want to defer execution until all of the DOM elements have been loaded and processed by the browser. After this happens, the get all items method is called to load data from the server. Then finally, the knockout apply bindings function is called to use the data model to process the data bind attributes. And here on page 774, the author says right here, you might be wondering why I've gone to all this trouble, given that I essentially replaced razor expressions with their equivalent knockout bindings. There are 3 important differences, and to demonstrate them fully, the author says we're going to use the browser tools. Well, I've had problems with these, so I'm not going to, but let's look at what they have. All right. The first is that model data is no longer included in the HTML sent to the browser. Rather, once the HTML has been processed, the browser makes an AJAX request to the Web API controller. It gets a list of reservations that are expressed as JSON. So as you can see this by starting the app using the F12 tools, etc., and go in there. I'm not going to do that. The second difference is that the data is processed by the browser rather than at the server as the view is rendered. To test this, we can edit the get all items function so that it doesn't make the AJAX request or process it. In other words, we just do a return so that none of that will ever be hit. The function will return before the AJAX request is made, and we can see the effect by restarting the application as shown here. It says this may seem obvious, but it is an important characteristic of SPAs that the browser does a lot more work, including processing data and generating HTML content. The final difference, as mentioned here halfway down on the bottom half of page 775, is that data bindings are live, meaning that changes in the data model are reflected in the content of the for each and text binding generated. So they're showing how you can manipulate this from the JavaScript console. All right. Pop basically means that we want to just remove. All right. In this case, I guess it was the last thing that was put in there. Right. All right, we are up to page 776, talking about improving the delete feature. Says now that you have seen how Knockout has changed the nature of the client, we're going to quickly loop back and remove a shortcut that we made when we defined the AJAX method. The remove item is badly written right here. So what we're going to do is the get all items is badly written in the remove item. So we're going to replace the remove item with this. As you can see, I'm just trying to pretty this up a tad. All right. The problem previously was that the function makes two AJAX requests to the server. The first to perform the deletion and the second to request the content of the repository to update the model. Now that we have demonstrated that the client maintains its own model and that live bindings reflect model changes in the HTML, we can improve as you've seen on the screen right here. So when the request to the server succeeds, we remove the corresponding data object from the model, which means that the second AJAX request is no longer required. All right. Middle of page 777. Getting used to the knockout syntax. There are some syntax quirks when working with knockout observable arrays, and two of them can be seen in listing 2714. To get an item from an array, we have to treat model.reservations like a function. All right? And then when it comes to removing it, we use a function that is not standard JavaScript. As mentioned here on the middle of page 777, Knockout tries to maintain the standard JavaScript syntax. Yet there are some compromises required to track changes to data objects. They can be confusing when you first start working with Knockout, but hopefully you soon get used to them. After you learn that you don't get the effect you require, it's likely because there's a mismatch between the standard JavaScript syntax and that syntax required by Knockout to do something similar. Oops. Once again, I'm at about that point where I'm going to stop here on 777, implementing the create feature. All right, so we will pick it up there in the next lesson.